Well, good morning, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order, the Polk County Board of Commissioners. Today is Tuesday, December 19th. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any comments for items not on the agenda today? I hear a motion to approve the minutes of December 12th.
Also move.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. Next up, we have the Polk County District Attorney, Mr. Felton. Please join us.
Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. It is always a pleasure to have the opportunity to meet with commissioners, talk about what's happening in my office. And as always, I value the opportunity to appear in a public forum as well. Since commissioners have elected to stream these meetings to the people of Polk County, I think it's a tremendous opportunity to talk about public safety and how my office is partnering with our other public safety partners in Polk County and address any concerns, questions, or concepts that commissioners have. And of course, anything that folks who are watching this proceeding in the community may have as well through follow-up through emails, because I get emails as you do. I get things on the web as you do from our shared constituency. So I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about things. I appreciate before we went live that you know that I am wearing one of our field jackets instead of my usual suit jacket. I didn't mean to do that out of disrespect by not wearing a suit jacket to the meeting today. It's an intentional piece. My overall presentation, of course, commissioners, please stop me at any time with your questions, because I always want to address your questions, because that's why I'm here. But I have a presentation that's going to bounce around just some more internal facts, some of the administrative pieces that are going on, rather than sort of the large policy things that are going around in the papers and headlines and that sort of thing, which of course I'd be happy to talk about. But I want to sort of talk more focus on some of the bread and butter things that are going in our office right now. So you have a sense of why I think we're doing some very interesting things, some things which are helping us, as I always say, kind of punch above our weight for an office our size, and dynamics for a lot of reasons. But when you start talking about those things, you sort of what gets left out is that we just don't have a desk practice. We just don't have a courtroom practice. The attorneys in this office have a very, very real person-based practice. And that means part of our job is going out into the field with our law enforcement partners, going to the scenes of potential crime scenes, but very often fatal accidents, fatal collisions, fatal situations. And when we do, we will wear this jacket, or depending on the weather, we have a polo shirt if it's in the summer that designates who we are, where we come from. You didn't see it. And from the back, you can see it says District Attorney in reflective lettering for our safety when we're out there as well. For years we didn't have that, and we talked about it. And fortunately, and I am grateful to the commission allowed through the budget process that we are able to acquire safety equipment for our deputy DAs who go out into the field and are recognized, so that when passing cars, because many of these are on our big highways, and so that is important that they be safe out there and have something that designates who they are. It also serves a very human purpose as well, because we often go to situations which are suicides or other tragic events in which families are present. Families of the deceased are present. And so part of it is us going and speaking with those family members, having something who identifies who we are as part of the response team out there, we find very meaningful for us. And so when we're arriving on scene, a family doesn't ask, who is this person getting out of a car coming into my home and why are they involved? We have a part of that process. So it's very meaningful for us. I learned that from the very beginning, back when I started in the last century going to those scenes. We always made a point of speaking and to the family members and sharing our regrets for their loss and just letting them know, especially if it's like a suicide situation, that there's not a crime, there's not something that you have to further add to the anxiety and the strain you're feeling, but we pay our respects. Having something like this helps. So I'm grateful for commissioners seeing that and helping in the budget make that happen. It is a contrast to when I started. I was thinking about saying this, and if I share a story. When I first started back in 1999, and I got my first on-call pager, the ringtone, I can still remember it these many years later. I was given the box, the on-call suitcase, which was an old Samsonite plastic thing. If you can remember, it was pretty beat up. Inside there was this green windbreaker that you literally could stood. It was so crispy from the use. And my wife and I tried to wash the smell out of it, but there was nothing doing. So I think we have at least modernized somewhat in the equipment we have. But it does not change the fact, even then, all the deputies go out. I still go out on scene when I take my turn with the on-call phone, and have been out recently, and we've had several fatals. And during the holidays is a hard time to do this. And as you've heard recently, there was a tragic plane crash, which took the lives of some folks who were trying to improve upon their situation for them and their families. And that's a tragedy. We had a person from our office, our chief deputy, was out there on that scene, seeing what role we could have and how we could be involved in that. But that's not uncommon. One of my first on-call situations, a fatal I went out to, was on Christmas Eve. And so the holidays are a time of great joy, but also can be very tragic at times for families. And so our office does that. And we're always on call throughout the holidays and after hours. So I don't mean to bring things down, but I did want to remind folks there's an external process to what we do. And it's just as critical as what I want to talk about, which is some of the internal things that are going on right now that we've been making really, really great strides with our public safety partners. And when I talk about public safety, I talk about law enforcement, but in particular, as we kind of move the process through, our public safety partners definitely include parole and probation, the courts. And of late, we've been doing some very quality things in terms of efficiency. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that we have been working on, which I know will make us more efficient and better at what we do. And I'm going to give a lot of credit to Chief Deputy Wilson in implementing some of these ideas that we've talked about sort of in grand schemes, him really saying, okay, let's make this happen. Let's make it happen now. And let's form a group to do it. And those sorts of things actually move ideas into reality. So we are very close to something which we call contemporaneous judgments now. We were calling them same-day judgments, but the courts were saying, hey, we have same-day judgments. But what we were trying to get them done in real time so that we can, when we're in court, have judgments be printed out and done at the same time, so that parole and probation can get the orders so they know what the court has ordered. Basically, when a person walks out the door and they're directed to go to parole and probation to start their program there, parole and probation knows what they need to do and what the court order is. We're working on getting that done. We're also expanding our plea offer forms. We had great help from Jody and her team in revising and designing the packages. Like, for example, when you commit a sex offense, there's a sex offender package, there is a drug and alcohol package, there's a mental health package, so that when the court orders that, it's already lined out in writing that comes with the plea offer, for example. So just tying all these disparate things into one big plea offer letter that comes to defense counsel, so they can see that, and the court can see that as well when the judge orders a sentence and an order comes out of that. That's a big lift, and it's been a lot of work from Jody's department, the courts as well. We're going to get there by the first part of the year, so that's a big internal piece. We're also changing how we're doing our probation violations. So the courts have agreed to sort of change up the time frame so that there's less time in court calling people into court for contested hearings that may or may not happen. Working with parole and probation, also with our courts and our defense bar, I think we're going to be able to cut down the number of unnecessary hearings in that regard, so that we only have contested hearings where we have to bring in probation officers or law enforcement is going to go way down. I think that would be a great help. Also, the courts have implemented, you may have heard the rapid resolution docket, which is a very quick type of settlement docket that Judge Hill oversees. And a lot of cases are not huge cases with lots of issues. They're smaller cases, they're misdemeanor cases or lower level felony cases that really what's happening is for whatever reason, parties aren't talking. Well, the defense is not able to talk with their client or whatever reason, getting with a judge where Judge Hill can just say, come on, why can't we find a resolution here that works for everyone? And just having a conversation with the judge saying to a client, hey, this isn't good. What you're saying isn't going to work, or whatever reason, or them coming back to us saying, well, they'd be willing to do this. Does this make sense? We've been able to clear a lot of cases that way that otherwise we go to trial, take the resources of it unnecessarily. So that's been a very positive result. And I have heard nothing but good feedback about that. So those are the types of sort of efficiencies that we've been implementing into our processes that again is causing the cases that we have on our open calendar to close much more quickly so that we don't have to keep coming back to court and delaying further. So I'm very pleased about that piece. Right now, we're running for all of our attorneys about 50 to 100 active open cases, which is good for us. And that's always a fungible thing. I mean, compared to what, right? And statistics are always interesting things, but that means basically cases that are being actively worked, not just sitting there sort of deadheading on someone's calendar, but they're actively working them in the review calendar, or they have them going to court, or they're moving them out on their trial docket. And obviously it depends on what type of case. A misdemeanor caseload is going to not be the same.
Can you repeat that number again, please?
Approximately 50 to 100 active cases. And it just depends on the attorney. I mean, Shannon, who has a sex abuse caseload, is going to be different than Garrett, who has a misdemeanor caseload. But again, that's actively supervised of saying, you've got to close out this case, you've got to move that case through. We could do what other counties do, Multnomah County, which basically they file all their declines and count them as a case. So we just try to focus on active working cases so that move through and close them quickly as well. We have one opening in the office, which we have been seeing people for, but haven't gotten to that ideal fit at this point. So the attorneys are covering the docket for that slot right now, which is in the child support and juvenile caseload. So that's been extra work primarily on Connor right now because he was doing juvenile already, and he's taken on most of the child support at this point as those have come up for court necessary hearings. We've been getting some good trial results. I try to we try to let folks know, the public know, as we've been going through court with some results, which I think the public ought to know about. We had some trials close finally with results, I think, favorable to the state. Usually you can find that if the press covers them, I'll put the press coverage on our Facebook post. We had a good 35-year sentence on the sex abuse case and a 25-year sentence on the sex abuse case. We finally had a shooting that happened on Christmas Day out in Grand Ronde. That trial concluded with a guilty verdict there on an assault in the first degree case, which with a measure 11 sentence there. So those are the internal things that I'm pleased to talk about. There are several more I could go into, but those are some highlights why I feel that when I say that we are for an office of our size, given compared to other offices our size and given the dynamics we have, I feel like we are able to be efficient and still, and filings are up. We're in the court statistic, filings are up right now, and that's accurate. Since we've been able to, some of the openings that we had, we've been able to fill, that allowed us to file more cases that were kind of sitting in review status. More lawyers means more cases filed. And so that's been really, really good. So I appreciate the joint efforts with commissioners in terms of, I would say, recognizing the nature of the market right now and making, I'm being able to attract and retain quality attorneys. When I was at the DA's conference, winter conference, talking to other offices of this size and smaller, the one topic was, how many vacancies do you have? Are you fully staffed? And other offices and other parts of every office is different, dynamics, geography, 2, 3 openings they're carrying for a long time. We're fortunately in a place where we don't have that right now. We have the one, and I feel I'm in a strong place to continue to be selective about the candidates we're seeing, which I am grateful for. Larger issues, Measure 110, of course, is what seems to be on the primary conversation of most policy, papers, headlines, most policy groups. Of course, ODA is involved in that. I've got another conversation with other board members tomorrow about potential options being put forward by my group, which of course is confidential it's not ready for public release, but we're actively involved in the conversation, as I think your organization is, cities, counties, public safety organizations. I can say, this is just speaking for me, some shift, some change will come out of the legislative session. And I'm trying to be guided by my own sense of what I think is the right result, but also I think the conversations this commission had in terms of the resolution that was passed that I signed on to is very prudent. And I think it's going to go in that direction. I might not agree with all of my colleagues. I may think that perhaps the level of recriminalization should be, for example, maybe a little higher than some of my colleagues from other parts of the state think. But I think we have to go in a different direction in terms of recriminalization of some areas than we've been on that. And I think that is an important step forward. And I'm happy to address that in more detail. I've hit my list. You've allowed me to talk, and I appreciate that very, very much. Are there questions or thoughts that you wanted to dive into?
Aaron, I'd kind of like to, first off, I just want to tell you I was very impressed how your office participated with parole and probation in the series of lunch meetings that we had. You had a great participation at your office. How did that help that relationship? Because right now, the push is less time in jail and more time in alternative methods. So at the same time, we see budgets being cut to do the outside options. So how did that come out? What have you heard from your staff from those meetings?
Well, I first of all I know that Director Merritt is here today, so I want to make sure commissioners know that full credit should be given to her and her officers for extending that invitation, making those lunches happen, putting the work to create an agenda. So we are deeply grateful for that, especially since we do have so many people new to the system, but it was helpful for people like me for reminders as well. It was a good conversation. It was a good combination of academics and practical and just open conversation and questioning. So it was one of the best things that we could do. And I think that not only did it expand the base of knowledge, just getting the people in the same room so they could recognize who's who was huge. So I really have a sense in speaking to my folks every day that they have an awareness that the parole and probation, the parole probation violations, and not only is that a integral part of the program that we do and the partnership we have and the relationship we have, is that consultation with Director Merritt's folks is critical to how we go forward. So I thought it was outstanding and really enriched my department.
You also mentioned that the number of cases you're filing on has increased. What percentage of an increase are you seeing? And then also percentage of cases you're being given. I know some of it's got to do with the job the police do. What percentage are you filing on at this time and prosecuting?
I think I'd have to get back to you on the precise numbers on that. But it's up. I mean, when the court says 8 to 10%, I'd like to see their numbers. But when we had that conversation at our bench and bar meeting, that feels right for us, that there is an uptick in the filings, and also the reviews. We're going back and clearing out review cases, and so. I hesitate to say up because people say, "Oh, crime is up." Not necessarily. We are able to now spend time because, for example, some of the cases we're filing are older cases. I think that the cases we're able to bring to grand jury have been in review for a while. But now that we have Shannon really up to speed, working the sex abuse caseload, she has been able to take some of those cases that we didn't have the resources to handle until we got fully staffed in that department. She's now able to take those cases and kind of move them through. So that's been a positive piece as well. So while I can't give you the percentage today, I know that they are up.
And one last one for me. At what level do you stop filing to prosecute? So are you prosecuting all misdemeanors? And they're above, or is there a certain level?
Let me answer it this way. We review everything that comes in. Doesn't mean we file everything, but every report or referral that comes in, either in custody, request for review, citation, is referred for possible prosecution. We don't have a do not prosecute list or an automatic arbitrary, we won't prosecute this or anything like that. Everything is reviewed for potential prosecution. Obviously, the outcome could be filing. It could be send back for additional work. But that's a pretty important value for me. Everything gets a look. And that's why I tell law enforcement, especially Salem, who I know that they are making choices about the resources that they have over there as well, is that we have a really strong partnership over here in terms of the sheriff, the jail, and our courts, is bring people here. If you see, if something rises to the level, I don't say, what if a law enforcement officer sees something rise to the level, putting someone in custody in Polk County, bring them to the jail, and we'll take it from here. There. So, and I think that's a lesson that we all are committed to, and has been time honored for a long time. We had some issues in pandemic, but we're past that.
So that's a great segue into my first statement to you is, as you well know, and I think most of us all realize that we hear a lot of news about what district attorneys are and what they are not across the country. And it's pretty frightening, I think, to all of us when we see news bits that demonstrate that district attorneys decide to take more political activism roles rather than more serious roles with regard to actual crime. Those are my words, but I think that's the feeling of a lot of citizens across the country. So I am always happy to give you and your team kudos for not being that. I don't believe that we're in a place where our citizens worry, is our district attorney's office actually serious about helping us fight crime and seeing to it that the appropriate disposition of cases is managed. for whatever that is. It is very concerning when we see the news that you brought Multnomah County into the conversation, so I'll just hold the door open. I mean, that is a very controversial district attorney, and I don't think a district attorney should be that controversial. So I appreciate that for the most part, you're not in the news. And I think that should give great confidence to the nearly 90,000 people that live in Polk County, that we have a district attorney and an office that is very serious about truly managing the disposition of these cases. And we can give credit to all the other ancillary agencies that participate with you and bring you these cases. It's important to acknowledge them, but you're the one that has to see to it that they all find a pathway to success. And I do realize that not everybody's always happy all the time. So I totally get that. The other thing is I'd like to touch on two things that, again, are in the news, especially in Oregon right now. And a lot of politics surrounding this, but also practicality of allegedly the lack of defense attorneys. I don't know what those numbers truly are, but I hear the rhetoric. And I'm curious about whether or not you can give us a sense of how much impact, if that's truly happening, how much impact that has on your ability to manage these cases.
Well, thank you for your first of all, your generous words and at the beginning of your comments. I think we are all in the same place, that we are responsive to a constituency and responsive to our community members and neighbors. So to the extent we are fortunately, I am grateful to be in a nonpartisan position, as you all are as well, that allows us to have conversations and receive feedback from our neighbors and other community members, which I think is free of that stuff, the partisan stuff. And so I am grateful for that. But I agree with you that even though I am an elected person, the business we do is not political, and it means making choices all the time that disappoint some people, that may have a consequence. But everyone at this table does the same thing. So I appreciate your kind words. But I don't do anything, I'll bring it up again, without the partnerships of the law enforcement people, the first responders, and the folks who are sitting in this room. As to your second part of the question about the defense shortage, we have been engaged here in Polk County about conversations related to that for a long time. We have convened, and right now we don't have that problem. I'm gonna go off in a long answer, as I do, but I'm gonna tell you, we don't have that issue the way other counties do. We have the closest issue that we have right now to sometimes having a lack of a defense attorney is when we have the most serious of cases, a homicide, or very, very serious. There's something called Jessica's Law, which is a very, very serious sex abuse crime that could result in automatic 25-year sentence. But those require very, very skilled, qualified defense attorneys. At times, we have not been able to find individuals that meet those qualifications right away. And that has to do a lot with their contracts and that sort of thing. That has been a situation where we've had to call around and had some delays. But for the overwhelming majority of cases that come through our doors, we have been able to get people, defense attorneys, right away, or to when well within any sort of X number of day period that any federal judge or any state court judge would say you need to get someone a defense attorney. We do not have that because we've been deeply focused for years, people in Polk County. And I would always say one of the best deals in town in legal service is getting court-appointed defense counsel in Polk County. Because, when I started back in the last century, it was a little good firm. And these were really, really good lawyers. They're here, they're local, they knew the bench, and they were good lawyers. So if you for some reason got into a situation where you needed one of them, that was a very good lawyer. And we still have very good lawyers here in Polk County, defense lawyers here in Polk County. So we have not had that situation because we've been working on it. We had a work group with myself, Judge Hill, defense lawyers, figuring out to make sure we didn't get that shortage happening here, and we haven't. I check periodically and on the OJD dashboard how many reported defendants without counsel. I've seen maybe 2, 3 occasionally, not many, and many of those I recognize are people who have fired their attorneys. So we don't have the situation that they have in the counties up north. So again, that's my long-winded answer to your very good question, but not a problem because, like in so many things, public safety partners, criminal justice partners have come together to work on it to make sure we have a protocol and a situation that we don't have it. I mean, even now, our next step is monitoring everyone. The courts, through the trial court administrator, is going to issue a report at the end of every day. How many people in custody have attorneys? If there's anyone that doesn't, how long has it been? So we're going to get daily updates on that. So I feel very confident that we are working through that shortage to the extent there is one, and we have not had a constitutional problem or a problem reaching constitutional proportions.
Thank you. And finally, I'll follow up with what are you seeing in regards to the trend lines for youth defendants, and what is there a trend line also in the outcomes for youth defendants? Again, big thing in the news every day. We're seeing a lot of youth crime going on across the country. Not necessarily so much in Polk County, but it does exist. And again, for the record, I don't mind sharing how frustrated I am to find out that young people under 18 can come in from other places, commit crimes in our county, and then by law get hauled back to the county that they came from. In a lot of cases, it's over the river, and they're out of our hands. And we don't follow up. We don't do anything with it. And again, I'm saying these things for the benefit of the record so that people understand this is some of the stuff that's happening when these youth criminals are coming into Polk County, that we don't get to prosecute them. So I'm overstating that perhaps, but I'm curious about what your office sees as that trend line right now, and what you think the outcomes are looking like. Well,
it's the situation that you raise is a particular. It's how the law is set up, and so I try not to get frustrated by that which I cannot change. My decisions made by legislation. That has been how it is for quite some time, as long as I've been in this business. I am certainly even more frustrated by more recent changes to the law in terms of youth that commit what would qualify as Measure 11 crimes, which used to be automatic waiver. And again, the waiver process of a youth that commits a very, very serious crime through the legislation some years ago became so complicated, so complex, and shifted the burden so much in the favor of the youth that it makes it very challenging. And sometimes I just step back from the purely administrative standpoint and not sort of get into simply a philosophical standpoint, saying for a county of our size, to be able to do a waiver hearing, such as and require all the experts that have to come in, that sort of thing, it's very daunting. And we've not had that because we've not had, fortunately, a youth come through that would have committed a crime such that we would want to undergo that process, retain those experts, go through that process. So I think that's, in one sense, a positive piece. But the shifts in the law took out a lot of the balance. And people could argue that, well, it was balanced the other way against the youth, but it went completely in the other direction from my perspective. So I think that is a shift in the law that I'm especially critical of. But ultimately, have to remember one of the great heritages in Polk County is we have one of the finest juvenile departments in the state. And that's always been true. We have had a tradition of outstanding and still do juvenile directors and juvenile probation officers and a network of providers that have just been outstanding. And they have the confidence and trust of the courts. My office, we have always prioritized juvenile practice with every other type of practice. We're not an office that assigns the newbie necessary to juvenile. That's why Matt Wilson, before he became chief as a senior level deputy in my office, handled juvenile practice in my office. And that's why Connor, who is handling it now at the mentorship of Matt, is handling it now. So in terms of the day in and day out practice of juvenile youth offenders in this county is a very, very strong engagement with the juvenile probation office. I know that there's going to be some transition coming up, and so I'm confident that that will continue, that leadership will continue. But this county is fortunate in that we are, in terms of the trends, I can tell you that we are actively engaged in contesting things like youth sex offenders who want to get off of the sex offender registry. We're actively engaged in that process as well. So our office is an active part of participating in the juvenile docket. So we don't see the same sort of trends that in other parts of the country in this county to the same degree, because I think we have a very effective and vibrant juvenile department that is proactively involved in engaging and intercepting folks at an initial level. And that's always been and our court is also deeply involved. So again, I think Polk County stands out in terms of being unique in its effective approach to juvenile. And so those outliers that you may hear about, we just haven't had them, like some of the most violent crimes and other things being committed by juveniles. We don't have the large retail thefts. We don't have sort of the most violent, heinous crimes. We haven't had that, fortunately. So I think we have a very strong network of not only providers, but also academic providers in our community.
So let me paraphrase. I think what I heard you say is that the trend line is not that juvenile crime is going up or is trending upward in Polk County.
Correct.
Okay, so you think it's stable, it's kind of been where it's been.
I think it's
maybe based on population growth, but it seems to be trending.
I think you will probably find there's individuals who are doing things that need interception, and those individuals are taken care of and moved through into OIA. But I don't think that necessarily indicates a trend.
You better define OIA.
The Oregon Youth Authority.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Felton, for your presentation and partnership. I may be contacting you as the short session unfolds about local impacts with some policy changes that are, like you mentioned, are upcoming. My understanding is that the legislature is going to ground a lot of their conversation around the policy proposals presented by the District Attorney Association and Law Enforcement Associations and LOC. AOC will be wrestling with some of the proposals in there. Particularly, I'm interested in the kind of community livability issues with public consumption of controlled substances, both in public and in public indoor settings. So lots to be had here, and there will be local impacts, local budgetary impacts. They're also talking about funding misdemeanor supervision with for crimes committed in association with drug and alcohol use. So lots of changes with lots of budgetary implications. So more to come.
Indeed. And by the way, I've not been able to reconnect with you. I've really appreciated the report of the rural homelessness report that you shared with me. A lot of the data was really eye-opening in terms of the rental costs and how that impacts folks on trying to work through that. So I found that was a very data laden and helpful report to read. So I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Thanks for reading it.
Yeah.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Are there any non-listed items we need to address before we adjourn? With that, we'll adjourn at 9:40. Thank you.